Radio.
Delicious, delightful, deconstruction, debate, Dubois.
Free Speech Radio. Nick Dubois on Talk Radio.
And welcome back. It is great to have your company. Quickly, before I go to my next guest, quite a feedback there on James Murray, the Labour Shadow Frontbench spokesman. Talk. James Murray sounds like an echo of the government. You chose my words precisely. I think Labour is misguided and nothing he has said has made me want to vote for them. We need someone to challenge the science. The CMOs have got it wrong so many times. We need to listen to a broader spectrum of scientists. Where is the debate and data? And that I don't have a name, I'm afraid. Meanwhile, we have Nick Dubois on Talk Radio now showing why Labour aren't a viable option to be in power. More restrictions based on scaremongering and data manipulation. On the other hand, the other view is the job of the opposition, Nick, is to oppose. It's to, I'll say that again. The job of the opposition isn't to oppose, Nick. It's to hold the government to account. If an opposition agrees with a policy, and on Plan B this one broadly does, then it has a duty to support it. Well, Gary, that's not unreasonable. Some would say that's sensible politics, but not to challenge on so many of the issues that I listed. I'm sorry, I think people's voices have to be heard, even if misguidedly most of the British population seem quite happy to have restrictions and get locked down. Now, let's go stateside for a minute, shall we, with Professor John Christopher Bauer, or Prof. JC. Good afternoon to you.
Nick, it's good to talk to you. It's Buer, and I'll call you Dubois.
Well, thank you very much indeed. I've been called many things in my life, and they're not all printable, so that'll do for me.
Me too, much worse than that, I have to say.
Now, come on, you're a White House correspondent, right, at Real Political News. You're there. You're in the bunker. You're with the press conferences where it all happens. So tell me, what's dear old President Joe Biden been up to holding these virtual summits? Something to do with encouraging democratic nations to all hug and get together, right?
Well, first off, he was on December 7th, the date which will live in infamy. He was on the doing a summit, a closed summit with his friend Vladimir Putin, and he told him what for about Ukraine and his aggressive actions there. And then 2 days later, he had a virtual summit with 100 democracies, and he chose who he considered were democracies. And he held that yesterday. And after the funeral ceremony in the cathedral today, National Cathedral, he's heading back to close that summit with the countries of democracies.
Well, hang on. Explain. Countries of democracies. What was he talking to them about?
This is very, very good. He invited 100 countries, and he announced initiatives for democratic renewal. And there was some blowback because he didn't invite Pakistan or he invited Pakistan and the Philippines, but he didn't invite Hungary and Turkey.
All right.
What his intention was, he wanted to show the authoritarian regimes that we're standing for something which is important. And he pledged $424 million towards, I'm reading here, so supporting free and independent media, fighting corruption, bolstering democratic reformers, advancing technology for democracy, and defending free and fair elections. And this was done off the back of his supposed summit with Vladimir Putin.
How did he feel about the fact that though in the West, this great country called the United States, have not exactly been exemplary in democracy? You've even got your own election being challenged by some in the States there. Was there, you've got a history storming of the Capitol. I mean, it's not all going smoothly there. Did any people feel that perhaps he shouldn't necessarily be lecturing or encouraging on democracy?
Well, I don't think he was lecturing on democracy. He is quite aware of what happened here on January 6th, that there was an insurrection led by the MAGA disciples of Donald Trump, who said that Joe Biden is not the president. Joe Biden is very aware of that, and he wanted to let the world know that he is extremely aware of that, and he will be dealing with the individuals who, in fact, were the insurrectionists. Some of them are jailed, some of them have been indicted, and some of them, like Trump's chief of staff, Meadows, is in big trouble. And now all his information, including a PowerPoint to bring all this insurrection to bear has been made public.
Okay, so I don't know if these two are linked or not, but some say when it comes to Putin and the threat to Ukraine, which frankly, because of our domestic problems here, we're not hearing enough about at all at the moment. But basically, some people are talking up that President Biden might be facing a Cuban Missile Crisis equivalent here.
Well, I think you're very, very bright and smart guy, needless to say. You know about MAD, mutually assured destruction.
Yes.
I lived through the Cuban Missile Crisis. I remember sitting there as a young lad, wondering, as the president was dealing with that problem, that there were off ramps, there was back channels going on, that Khrushchev and Kennedy knew each other well enough to know that if any one of them really pushed far, there could be the end of the world. Well, whether Putin knows that or not, I think it's Biden's role, and I think he's saying that, he said it to us in the press, that he's offering severe results if Putin in fact invades, and he's probably using more of the economic aspects of this, making them suffer. And the oligarchs, they own Putin, and they own lots of properties in Belgravia and Kensington, which I know you know, and they're not going to be happy if the SWIFT issue goes into place, where they cannot be using the financial elements.
I should just explain. Do you mean the SWIFT, the banking system that stops them being able to move their money around there? I think.
Sorry, I know you're the sophisticated audience. I figured they'd pick that right up, but I had to learn what that was.
Listen, Prof, if I may, I've got a question for you. Right? I remember, and it's the world over. It goes from dictators to Democrats. If they start thinking they're in trouble at home, they spend all their time trying to do things abroad. Now, I get the impression that he's kind of been told, these couple of weeks, Mr. President, these are the time for you to enter the world stage and start doing whatever needs to be done. I mean, is there an element here of he's more comfortable dealing with international issues than some of his domestic ones?
He was head of the Foreign Relations Committee at Foreign Service, etc. And he is very, very well equipped to deal with that. But he has his own issues. We have a coronavirus problem. We have a problem with the budget. We want to make sure that our budget is funded, and it's the budget, by the way, that Trump put in place. And he has to deal with a domestic audience here that is dealing with inflation issues. They're dealing with the price of gasoline. He has domestic issues. Whether he's going to take the bully pulpit, as many say, well, when in doubt, go on the bully pulpit, go on the world stage. He's smart enough to know he's got a balance. He has a balance program, and he will appeal to the American people in terms of his strength, but also in terms of what he's trying to do to give the average person a break.
But couldn't it backfire? Because quite honestly, I'm not convinced the West knows how to deal with Putin.
Well, I mean, he's a thug. He's a former KGB lieutenant colonel. He'd love to be a combo of Stalin and the Tsar. We know, it's a good one. I like that you laughed at that. I teach my students that he's a real mixed gem. And after Sochi, he decided the world's watching me. I'm going to go to Crimea and take it over. There has to be a stop. There has to be a limit. And I think the countries. Our greatest allies, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, who's having new leadership, and other countries in that part of the world must be engaged and must let Putin know that this will not go. NATO is solid. NATO is solidly behind Ukraine and Zelensky. And the president spent a good amount of time, well over an hour, on the phone with Volodymyr Zelensky yesterday, saying that there will be no discussions about Ukraine without Ukraine.
Well, okay. Now, just a point here on NATO, right? We know they had their ups and downs, to say the least, with President Trump. It sounds like what you're saying is Biden values NATO, and he believes that NATO has a key role to play. But some of those countries are still not coming up with the money, are they, and their defense budgets? Is that something he's going to ask them to do as well?
Well, I think that's another stage. I mean, it was Trump who wanted NATO to write him a check. Right there on the spot. I think it was in Geneva or whatever they had the conference. But Biden is not that obtuse. But Biden knows that NATO means support on every aspect. And needless to say, Great Britain and the United States are key members of NATO. And I think Putin honestly would like to see the entire European Union and Great Britain pull apart. So he's got some more traffic that he can play.
Prof. JC, can I give you a quiet tip just between you and me? And if you get the chance, share it with the president.
No one else.
We'll be We'll be up for this partnership working. But can you carry on isolating the French, because that really winds them up?
We love the French. France was our first ally. You know that, don't you?
Yeah, I know. That was against us, pal. All right?
I know about that. I'm sorry to say. I love Great Britain. And I miss being in England. And I miss being in London, my favorite city in the world.
Well, let's hope your country doesn't overreact to the Omicron and it still allows us to travel, shall we? Prof. JC.
I wish we could travel. I'd love to see you in studio. It's with Rob and all my other pals.
Be brilliant. Prof. JC, thank you very much indeed. As ever, very entertaining, but highly informative as well.